When I read today's readings in preparation for this sermon, my first thought was, aren't these the readings, the ones that we use during Advent and during Christmas? And of course, at Advent and Christmas, there are these very famous readings, and most notably, John chapter 1, verses 1 to 14, is always the final reading in any service of 9 lessons and carols, and it's usually a reading that is read at least at one of the Christmas services. But of course, these readings are very rich in significance and meaning, and they always have much to say to us, no matter when they are read. And in many ways, these readings are here. They are getting us ready as we journey through Lent. Obviously, we've not quite reached Lent yet, but we are very nearly there. And so they are, in a sense, they are setting the scene for what is to come. It's a kind of the backstory, if you like, for getting us ready for Lent. And as someone who writes and delivers eulogies at funerals on a regular basis, I am obviously used to the key bits of information that families want to include. And so where their loved one grew up and who significantly influenced their childhood is invariably a key piece of information. And what we see in both of our readings from Colossians and from John is that they tell us about where Jesus has come from, something of his background, his upbringing, if you like. But of course, there's nothing ordinary about the background of Jesus. And so Jesus' background is a story of one who was with God at the beginning, and in some sense comes down to us, comes down to earth from heaven. And so in Colossians, we see that it says, and I quote, "All things in heaven and on earth were created." And then again in John, we read that it says, he, Jesus, was in the beginning. And then we also see echoes of this idea in our reading from Proverbs. So you get this idea that Jesus, his background, his story, where he has come from, is something other than just this immediate nature of there was a child who was born at this particular time. Because Jesus, in these readings, we see has his origin, his history is rooted in the creation of the whole world. And then John goes on to describe Jesus as the one not just who was there at the beginning, but who lived among us, and we have seen his glory. And so Jesus then is the person through which God reveals his actions and glory in the world through what he says and what he does. So what is about to happen in this story that's right at the very beginning, at least in John's Gospel, is really, really significant. Listen to him, see what happens in this story, because this is the person through whom God will reveal his glory in the world. In our house, Zach, that's my oldest boy, he enjoys playing with a torch, and this particular torch projects numerous dinosaur images on the wall, and you turn a wheel to select the particular image of the dinosaur that you want on the wall. Of course, to see the image on the wall, it needs to be dark. And so it's not unusual to have Zach close all the curtains in the middle of the day, just so that he can see his dinosaur image on the wall. And it has to be said that it's not always the ideal lighting conditions for whatever else we might want to be doing when curtains are closed in the middle of the day. Historically, God's glory has been revealed through light. God creating light in the creation story, God's presence in Exodus as a pillar of flame, and finally the call of Israel to be a light to the nations. In all these examples, we see God's presence and his glory through light. And now we read in John that Jesus shines as light in the darkness. As with Zach's dinosaur torch, the darker it is, the brighter the light of Jesus shines. And so John is setting the scene for his gospel account. And he will go on to show what God's light shining in the darkness looks like. And in fact, just about every theme that we read in these first 14 verses of John are picked up later in the gospel. There's so much that we could talk about in these few verses. And so as we journey towards Lent, which is particularly early this year, we will soon encounter Jesus in one of his darkest moments. We will encounter Jesus in his 40 days in the wilderness, and that's this time where he prepares for his public ministry. It is, of course, also this idea, these 40 days are what Lent are based upon. And Jesus, therefore, what we see as he goes into the wilderness is far from afraid to enter into the darkness of our world. And in fact, it is fundamental to the reason that he has entered into our world in the first place. And so, as Christians, the reason that we carry hope with us, even in the darkest of times, is that Jesus enters into darkness. He enters into darkness with us, and he brings his light. And we read that there is no darkness that Jesus' light cannot overcome. I am sure that in the recent months, as they've gone by, we will have all had days of feeling like we were in the darkness, not really knowing what the future held, and maybe things just going on and on and on again and again when we really wanted to get out of the house or we wanted things to change. Today we are reminded of not only the fact that the light is with us, but also that God's glory is with us, that we are his children, that we can know God for ourselves. All of these truths we see in this reading from John. And so I wonder, which of these truths do you particularly need to hear today? That the light is with you, that God's glory is with you, that you are God's child, or perhaps that you can know God for yourself. I encourage you to take the time to really let this soak in, the particular truth that you need to hear today, and give thanks that Jesus is with you. So perhaps at the end of watching this, take the time to really think about that. Which of these do you really need to hear today? Take the time to let it soak in and to give thanks that Jesus is with you, that the light is with you, that God's glory is with you, that you are his child, and you can know God for yourself. And so may we hold on to all of these truths as we continue to walk with Jesus, no matter what the future holds. And may we too bring the light of Jesus to those around us. Amen.